introduce to you my very good friend, Angi Holden, Dr. Angi Holden. And I've known Angi since 2000 and, was it 4, Angi, when we started our degree, when we were both doing a creative writing degree together. But Angi kind of overtook me. She did a creative writing degree and then she did a PhD, and she then became a tutor in creative writing in a university. And she's a poet as well as a writer of fiction, but poetry is her thing. And I'm just delighted to show you this, which is her pamphlet, which is called Spools of Thread. And it was the winner of the Mother's Milk Pamphlet Prize, the inaugural Mother's Milk Pamphlet Prize. And it's all about, and it said, when I read about it online, it said it's all about relationships, love, parenting, and being parented. All these are explored in the pamphlet. The poems are image rich, sensitive, and filled with love. Spools of Thread is an exquisite body of work by a much loved poet. It is as rich and colourful as spools of thread themselves. And you know what, that's so beautiful what someone wrote. And then I thought, you know what, I'm going to write my thing about Angi. And I've written, she has the most amazing way of noticing the small things, seeing their significance, and then painting a word picture of what she sees so we can work it out for ourselves. I think you'll see that when you hear her poetry. It's so beautiful and so image rich. I'm left with a feeling of quiet peace, often emotional nostalgia, and most importantly, that I've learned something new and valuable which I can implement to improve my life. So without further ado, Angi has brought a poem to read.
Oh, thank you very much. That's lovely. What an introduction. Yeah, so Spools of Thread it's basically about, it's wound, if you'll pardon the pun, round the idea of family and the importance of family and friendships. And so there are poems in here about my mother and my father and my husband and my children. But the one I'm going to read is, Jane asked me to choose poems that were about strong women. So I'm going to read you one from here, and then I'm going to read you a short one from Helen Mort, because I just think that's pertinent at the moment. So this one's about my grandmother. My grandfather was a policeman, and then when he retired from the police force, he became a publican. They were co-publicans of a pub in the middle of Oxfordshire. And so this.
Can I just interject there and say, for those of you, can I just interject and say, for those of you who are not in England, a pub is a bar, isn't it, Angi, really?
Yeah. It's
English type of bar.
Yeah, very English, yes. And so my grandmother was publican at this pub, ran this pub during the war years. And so this is a story that it's a true story that came out of her experience during the war. And it's called Other Mothers' Sons and the Publican's Wife. We found the letters tied in bundles in her roll-top desk, each one dated 1945 or 6, each postmarked from a US state: Nevada, California, Texas, Idaho. For 6 long war-torn years, she'd pull the pints behind the Marlborough's bars, dispensing beer and sympathy to soldiers, sailors, airmen, destined for the training camps and battlefields of Europe, Asia, Africa. The carapace of uniform made men of boys. Beneath the khaki fabric lurked their adolescent fears, the pain of being torn from kith and kin. And thinking of her son in distant Singapore, she offered comfort, friendship, love, encouraged them to talk of New York streets, of ranches, mountains, prairies, creeks, of hunting, skinny dipping, karting, fishing. They spoke of fathers playing baseball, of mothers baking cookies, cornbread, of shared Thanksgiving's dinners, lobster chowder, of barbecues with brothers, sisters, cousins, aunts. She taught them crib and dominoes. They taught her poker, three-card brag. And when her son came home, whole despite a body pocked with shrapnel, she wondered how those other boys had fared, how many made it back. And then the precious letters came from grateful mothers, who, hearing of her kindness, thanked her for being there when they could not, thanked her for cherishing those stateside boys, those other mothers' sons.
Wow.
Well, that was my grandmother, who was, as I say, a publican, and she was just very supportive of all the lads that came through her pub over the years, and just hoped that somebody was equally supportive of her own son. So, I'm going to read you another one, because this one's by a poet called Helen Mort. Now, this is Helen Mort's book, and it's largely about climbing, but it's actually all about women, and they're all women who were very they were enthusiastic about climbing, but they were very strong women in order to get themselves out into those sorts of environments at the time. But there's a poem in it which I think is relevant to now, and it's called Difficult Women. And it starts off with a quote from the internet on a site called Ask Men Why Men Date Difficult Women. And the remark is, God knows there are difficult women out there, women who are, at times, shallow, bitchy, selfish, dishonest, and of course, crazy. Difficult women don't care what time it is. They're crowding the bus stop with their difficult bodies, refusing to budge for the light, or in the parks, dragging their difficulty behind them like a fat dog. Some of them are running, cycling, or worse, driving cars. If a difficult woman hits you at 30 miles an hour, you have a 50% chance of survival. At home, difficult women are more like walls than windows. But if you lean on one, you fall straight through. Sometimes at night, they show you your face. Difficult women don't know they're born. Difficult women don't know the meaning of the word. There could be one folded into your newspaper, holding her breasts like oranges. There might be one carrying your coffee or moving to your road. In London, it said you're never more than 6 feet from a difficult woman. Have you or a colleague had a difficult woman in the last 6 months? If so, you might be entitled to compensation. Do you have difficulty with our questions? Are you afraid you might be difficult yourself? One always makes me laugh, but it has a certain resonance at the moment, I think. I think we all have a responsibility on occasions just to be difficult women. Stand up for ourselves.
Yeah. That reminded me a bit, Angie, of I recently found one of my old school reports, and it said that I was all the things that were said about me by the teachers were all like really. I think I was 9 when it was written. Oh, she's great at this and she's good at that and she's really bright and she knows the answers and she's, you know, she's involved in the lessons and she can do all the exams and da 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 da. And then my form teacher had written something along the lines of, she's just a little bit too much at times. and I remember thinking, oh, what have I done wrong? I don't really understand. I've done what I've been told to do, which is to answer the questions and to do my very best and to kind of, you know, discuss things with teachers and stuff. And you can imagine what I was like, jabber, 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 and telling the teacher that she'd spelt things wrong on the board and what have you, but she shouldn't have spelt it wrong, should she? And yeah, I was too much. Shocking. She was a woman herself as well. So Angie, the poem has made me fill up quite a lot towards the end. Just that idea of looking after other people's children. Beautiful. And I wanted to ask you, was she your maternal grandmother or your paternal grandmother?
She was my paternal grandmother. She was my dad's mom. My dad was one of two. But there were 10 years between them, so he was quite young when war broke out. He was only 19, and his brother was only 9, so he didn't see active service, the younger brother. But my father left school when he was 14, which was fairly common at that time, and always regretted that he hadn't had the education that he might have had. So the forces for him were, well, obviously a fairly terrifying time, but also it was an opportunity for him to learn and to get some qualifications, which he hadn't been able to do. And it resulted in, Jane and I have talked about this in the past, it resulted in him becoming a passionate advocate for lifelong learning, and that's something that I've taken on board. I mean, I didn't do my degree until I was in my 50s, and you know, I set off to university at the same time as my younger daughter, so she was 18 and heading off to Southampton, and I was going, right, that's it, that's my opportunity, and I ended up at MMU with Jane and a few other good friends that I've kept over the years, which have been really good.
Yeah, it's been brilliant. It was brilliant, wasn't it?
I've got some questions for you. What sort of poems did you read during your breakouts?
Yeah, who wanted to share a poem that they read? I think Parita needs to share her poem. Parita's poem is, she wrote it herself, but I'll let her tell you the story behind it because it's beautiful. Are you willing to share that, Parita?
Yes, I will. And I would like to say, Dr. Holden, that was very, very beautiful. I too like your poetry about the soldiers, and my dad was a soldier in the Vietnam War, so it really hit home and resonated with me. And I was just trying to soak that in, and I think that was very beautifully written, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Um, and the poem that I wrote was very quite short because I wrote it for my nephew who is 14. And with these trying times of COVID-19, the children are so isolated, they need a way out. And he had approached me, asked me a good way to do that. And I thought of poetry because it could be funny, it could be short, it could be long, and it could be a way to express your emotion and you know, have it said short or long. And so I wrote him a poem, and he received my poem. And my poem went like this: Love is like dew, Love is like milk. Love is like honey. Love is like silk. And he
Love.
loved it. And he responded to it by saying, love is like happiness. Love can cause pain. Love is like a rose that can fall and still grow. So that was really sweet to me. And that's my point.
So I think, what does everybody else think? But I think that actually Parita needs to send him another couple of lines back and let him, and then they could build this great poem together, couldn't they? Are you running out of data to go home? Sorry. Sorry, go on, Angie.
I was going to say it becomes a dialogue, a conversation then, and I think that's lovely.
Yeah. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It's lovely. And it'd be something very precious to both of you, I think.
Thank you.
So,
I appreciate it.
Sandra, are you going to say something?
Oh, okay. So I didn't get to read my poem in our session because we connected so well just talking about.
Oh, that's really
so,
good.
Yeah.
Read it now.
I was wondering if I could read it now. I haven't read it to this many people before.
It's okay, we'd love to.
So it's basically just about, I've had a very hard life and childhood. I think I shared some of it with Karen earlier when we spoke. So really a lot of what I've written has come from that pain, but also from the wisdom and the insight from the lessons I have learned. So hence your legacy. May the pages that follow be filled with love, kindness, peace, and gentleness. May it be filled with wisdom that reach beyond the boundaries of this world and yet still be able to teach and reach the many hearts that's been left cold and alone by many that was unable to acknowledge or comprehend the true meaning of love in its whole. May it be a fountain of refreshing water for the hungry and thirsty soul, and may it be a roadmap for the stumbling feet. Life will always have challenges, but how we embrace them will determine the life we live. No matter our flaws, remember that no symphony started out perfect. There were notes that needed adjustment, some that needed some adjustment, but irrespective of this fact, it ended beautifully. Therefore, as you go through the pages that will follow, remember your life is like a symphony. Some notes will need adjustment, but once perfected, the sound your life makes will be resound in eternity.
Wow, that's beautiful. Did you write that, Sandra?
Yes.
Wow, that's amazing, isn't it? I love it. I love it. Very talented.
Yeah, I wrote
the
that.
idea of a roadmap in there, and also the references to music, I think, is gorgeous. Lovely.
And the reference to pages is, I actually used pages because every single day when you wake up, it's a blank page. So what you put on that page, that's your story. That's your symphony.
Do you know what? I wished I'd read that poem this morning. Karen's laughing. Yeah, it's so true, is that, and beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us, Sandra. It's so beautiful. Thank you. Karen, have you got one to share?
I haven't. I've got one. My mom was supposed to be with us this evening, and she wasn't able to join us, but she sent me a poem that she wrote. It's very, I know. So maybe I can just share it quickly. It's just a short one that she wrote.
Yeah.
It said, "This year has been a strange one. On that we all agree. It's made lots of changes in our lives for you and for me. It's little things that we miss, like all the folk who matter. But we can still pick up the phone and have a good old natter. It's not all bad. It gives us time to do things we have put on hold. And we stayed home snug and warm and didn't have to go out in the cold. Now things are getting back." Can't read this bit. "Things are getting back to norm. We thank the Lord that we are safe. Let's go and visit a special place and say thank you."
Oh, bless her.
That's lovely.
That's really lovely.
nice,
Do you think she
yeah.
wrote that especially for this, Karen?
She did. She did.
Oh,
Oh,
Which is
bless
lovely
her.
because she hasn't written anything in a very long time. And I think she's been having a really tough few weeks. Yeah, my mum's been struggling with cancer for the last few years. And so whenever, yeah, it's been pretty tough. And I think the last few weeks in particular have been quite hard on her. So to be able to do something, have an opportunity just to write a little poem like that, I think it's good for her to just kind of connect with something that she enjoys doing. She enjoys painting and she just hasn't been doing it. So that was just really nice to see.
So good for the soul, isn't it, poetry?
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Karen. It was
I think
lovely. I really liked.
That highlights some of the really good things that have happened over the last year. I think it's been a really difficult year for so many people. And yet I think one of the things I've taken away from it is this ability to talk to people all over the world. You know, Zoom has, for me, has been a massive boon. I wouldn't have known the word 12 months ago, and I went into sort of quite a writing slump when lockdown first came. I didn't, Jane will tell you I write all the time, so for me not to write for 3 months, it was like I'd completely fallen apart.
Yeah.
But then I ended up going to a Zoom workshop that had originally been an in real life workshop, and it just went on to Zoom, and I really wasn't interested, I'll be perfectly honest, and I went along because I was trying to support the person that was running it, and it was a matter of courtesy. And I just thought there's a whole world out here, and I've just not stopped since. And most Tuesday nights about 10 o'clock at night I'm in New York. And the other day I was in Philadelphia, and and it's this concept of being all over the place. I can be in Europe one moment and off in stateside another. Australia has just about beaten me, although I did manage Japan. But I haven't quite managed to be awake at the right time for Australia. But
I've done Australia at 8 in the morning. My mentor lives in Australia, so I'll meet her at 8 in the morning. Yeah. But right here on this, as we're speaking now, we've got UK. So we've got where I live, Madeley, and Anne lives in Stoke-on-Trent, and Cassie lives in Rotherham, and then Karen lives in Eswatini, and Sandra, do you live in South Africa? Whereabouts?
Pretoria East.
Pretoria East, okay. And then Denise, where are you, Denise?
Sheffield.
Sheffield. And Parita, are you North Carolina, did you say, Parita?
Yes.
North
United
Carolina.
States. Yes.
Yeah.
wow.
And Angie, you're in
Cheshire.
So
And
we're
Colleen
doing
was
all
in
right,
Cape
aren't we?
Town. Colleen
And
was in
Colleen,
Cape Town, and
yeah.
Taborho was in Johannesburg, I think.
Joburg, yeah.
Wow.
So
Free
we're doing all
State.
right. So we've got 3 continents.
Wow.
Today.
I hope that some of these connections continue. Once we've gone back to some form of normal life, whatever that looks like.
Yeah,
These connections continue, because for me they've just been wonderful. Just to be able to regularly spend time with like-minded people across the world is just wonderful.
It is.
Isn't it? It is. Thank you. Denise, have you got a poem to read to us? Oh, your paragraph. Did you find your paragraph?
Yeah, I've got that.
Go on. Do you want to read that to us? Thank you, Anne.
Yeah, just a second, I've lost it. Yeah. Yeah, it's called Dissertation. The deadline loomed. 3 hours sleep shrouded her eyes. She sat at the laptop to resume. Coffee sat on the desk. She twirled the mouse across the mat. The screen lit up. She clicked on the file, My Dissertation. She watched as the small circle of dots that fills the heart with dread went round like a snake chasing its tail. The minutes ticked. Suddenly, a black screen reflecting her white face. Nothing appeared.
Oh my goodness me, that's your worst nightmare, isn't it?
We know that feeling, Jane, don't we?
We were staying up all night. Everybody used to turn, when we turned in our assignments, we were just like this with our eyes down here. And for me, a Red Bull in my hand.
And we'd be exchanging messages like, I'm cleaning the kitchen floor, what are you doing? Anything to put off the focus on what we were having to do.
Yeah, displacement activity.
I can see Cassie nodding her head. Is that what? Yeah.
She's doing the finals this year, aren't you, Cassie?
You're just doing
I've
it,
got
aren't you,
6
Cassie?
weeks left. 6 weeks left and it's all over, and I'm procrastinating right now. Technically, I have an excuse. I can come on Zoom.
We're happy to be your
activities.
I must say, I did think of you, Cassie, when I read that.
Yeah, as Denise was reading it out, I was just like, yeah, that's me at the moment every day. Really worried that I might lose my work somehow. I've got it saved on about 10 different places at the moment because just in case something goes wrong. I've got a USB stick, I've got it on my OneDrive, I've got it on my laptop, I've got it everywhere. It's just any place that it will stay.
Yeah, my daughter's the same. Yeah.
One of mine and Anne's friends, she lost her work for a master's, didn't she, Anne?
Yeah,
and
that was due to NHS computers.
Yeah, and it was just the worst thing for her. She just went down into the pit of despair, didn't she?
Gosh, she really did.
And I'm not sure she's really come out of it yet, and it's about 2 years ago.
Yeah, she had to redo the whole thing.
And then during the first lockdown for us, I had some young people staying here because I couldn't. I was doing what your grandmother did, Angie, and I couldn't really leave them on their own. So they all ended up coming to stay at our house. And two of them would, one of them was doing his finals, and he couldn't access his work because it was all at university, and they wouldn't let him in to get access to the computer. So he had to rewrite all his dissertation from the scratch. It was just a nightmare trying to. It was like pushing him up a hill. He just could not do it. It was really hard, but he did it and he passed.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So I wanted to just say a big thank you to you all for bringing your poetry, and for those who brought poetry that they'd written themselves, an extra special thank you. And I hope you've all enjoyed it, and it's just been absolutely lovely, Angie, to see you again and to hear you read your poems. You've been so inspirational to me in my life with your poetry, and I'll never forget the poem that you wrote about your mum's gloves in the drawer, and all the stuff that you've read has always been so wonderful to me. So thank you. And so it's been lovely to see you, and I hope you've all enjoyed it, and we'll look forward to seeing you all next week. Lots of love. It's been fabulous. Bye.